It's going to be another fun show. You know, we're going to spend some time on the Biden book, and I have some audio that I dug out of my Audiotron 3000 here for the James Show that no other media outlet has played. That, dude, you might wreck your car. You're going to laugh so hard. But that's coming up in about a half hour. I got E.J. Antoni in the next hour in the next segment from Heritage Foundation to talk about all things economic. But I just want to put a push pin in your memory bank right here. Today is the last day of the Texas legislative session. We have 1 day left. And so tomorrow we're going to get a full recap. Now, as it stands now, unless there's a whole change in philosophy down in Austin, you're going to be severely disappointed. Now, there are going to be some things that are run over the finish line today. You'll get a full recap from local state representative Brian Harrison from the Midlothian area. And look, I can't tell you how disappointing this legislative session has been. And one of the good things I like about the Texas legislature is it only meets once every 2 years for 4 months. And then the bad thing, the thing I don't like about the Texas legislature is, if they lay an egg, you got to wait 2 years for another shot at it. So that kind of adds to the disappointment. If you were hoping for school choice, you didn't get it. Now, they passed a bill that said school choice, but it's only going to be eligible to 1% of Texas students. And my concern on that is when outcomes don't get significantly better and we're still having all kinds of issues, the critics will say, well, we tried school choice and that didn't work. No, we hadn't really tried it yet. And we're not going to get another chance to try it for 2 years. You did not get property tax relief. That was one of the things almost everyone promised you on Team Red when you voted for them and sent them down there. And then 36 of them voted with the Democrats, and then adopted their agenda, I guess, on so many of these votes, whether or not it was for Speaker of the House or some of these other priorities or school choice. You have a kind of a turncoat caucus. The Rhino Caucus is what myself and Brian Harrison are calling it. Now, we have the list out here, and I've mentioned this list elsewhere in the show, and every time I do, I get about 13, 14 emails, I need to see this list. And I don't think I've ever mentioned it in the first segment of the show. So if this is the only time you get to listen, maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it. Myself and Brian Harrison made a list. I got him to get me the list. We got someone else to make a map, so you can go to the website that we have set up for you. Find out if your representative is one of the turncoats, which means you need to primary them out next year. If you don't know who your representative is, that's okay. We have a map right there, and you can see it's my house in one of these highlighted districts. Okay, what number is that? Okay, it matches with the list over here. That's my guy. So we've made it as cut and dry as simple, because as it stands, what can we do about this? It's too late. To do something about this is during the primaries, because once the Republican candidates out, they're going to win in the general. So if you're going to get these incumbents out who are going against your will and keeping your property taxes high, we have to do it in the primaries, and we have to pay attention to a nuanced micro level of politics. It's just not cool. It's just not fun. It shouldn't have to be this much work or a part-time job. But here's the ugly little part that we forget, and I forget too. I'm not blaming you. I'm just as bad as you are about this. In democracy, you get the government you deserve, and you get it good and hard. And I guess I haven't been paying attention. And here's me admitting guilt. I don't know who my state rep is. I don't think I'm in Brian Harrison's district, but for where I'm sitting right now for this studio, I don't know who it is. For where my house is, okay, I know who that is. But I do this for a living. We're just going to have to pay more attention. We're going to have, and it's not a whole lot. It's get out to the primaries, maybe encourage some other people to get in the primaries. If you don't have a good candidate, some of you are just going to have to buck up and run yourself. It's going to be a pain in the butt. It's going to cost you a lot of time. It's going to cost you a lot of money. But we need you. We need some people to step up. It's not that hard to become a state rep. There's 150 of them in this state. It's probably a lot easier than you think. But when you do your mortgage, when you did it at the first of the month, and you looked, how much of that payment was actually your house bill? $1,000? And then you have, some other stuff rolled up in there? Insurance? Okay, how much was that? A couple $100? And then the leftover, that's all taxes? This is what we're talking about here. This is what you're ignoring. How bad does that part of your monthly escrow have to be before we pay more attention? Because it's killing me. And this is supposed to be Texas. This is supposed to be a limited government state. We're supposed to have low taxes. We're celebrated for low taxes, not in property taxes. For the brief time I lived in Louisiana, it's about the same as here. So Just look at that. That's what's at stake here, and that adds up. If we can cut that in half, we raise your standard of living. Not just for you, so you can go get more beer on Saturday, but for your family, for your kids, for your grandkids. If you're on a fixed income, this is one of the ways that you can actually get ahead for 5 seconds and get your nose above water. We've got to do a better job paying attention to this. I'll try and step it up here on the James Show. But I want you to get this list. I want you to get the Rhino list that myself and Brian Harrison have put together. The other thing that I want you to know about is we're going on the road. The James Show, it has a remote scheduled for Monday. So, yeah, we don't get out of the studio very much. I don't know if I just have BO or whatever. But no, just jokes aside. It's the Mullen & Mullen Golf Tournament, Las Colinas Country Club. It's in Irving on Monday, May 19th. I'll be broadcasting live, from 2 to 5 for the duration of the show. But don't worry, I'll be getting there a couple hours early because, listen, here's the secret about going to golf tournaments. You don't have to play golf or be in the tournament or even know golf rules to enjoy it. It's a scene. All of these places are a scene. So it's a good time. It's a great excuse to ditch work. You're like, I know it's Monday, boss, but it's for charity, and it really is for charity. They're raising money for the Scottish Rite Hospital, Urban Boarding Experience, Outdoor Tomorrows Foundation, Divine Equine Therapeutic Riding Center, and Fire Horse Rescue. So they're just going to try and get a whole bunch of money out of some people that play golf. We're going to have a good time. It's going to go for a good cause. They have a bunch of details here if you want to get directions and whatnot. Go to mullenandmullen.com. They have a pretty good rundown on the ticket.com too, but mullenandmullen.com has a little bit more info on it. Plus, it's their tournament. They've been doing this for 41 years. So come on out, say hi, you get to meet me, shake my hand, take a selfie, and judge me based on my appearance. I know that's what you really want to do. My next guest is someone you've probably seen on Fox or Fox Business or somewhere. He's from the Heritage Foundation, America's #1 conservative think tank. E.J. Antoni back on the James Show. And, I saw last time you were on the show, about 35 minutes later, you're on Larry Kudlow's, and you didn't tell him I said hi.
Hey, I told him in the commercial break. It just wasn't live. That's all. Oh,
I hope you did. I'd be so happy. I'm such a big... The more economics I read, the more I'm a fan of like you and Santelli and Laffer and Steve Moore and Kudlow. I love all those guys. You guys are great. But I need you to break down some of this in regular speak here. When we see these giant deals that are being reported, the headline says $600 billion deal with the Saudis, $1.4 trillion deal with the nation of Qatar. And I mean, these are some huge numbers. I don't even know if these are real numbers.
$400 trillion, $600 billion.
Now, EJ, is that new investments, or are we rolling up transactions that were already going to happen anyway, and we just have, the total package number?
No, these are new investments, but it is important to remember, I think, that these are not all instantaneous payments. They're not even in the first year. Many of these projects are things that are going to take 3 or even 5 years, sometimes more, to actually finish. And so it's not as if you're going to get this immediate cash infusion into the economy and into Americans' pockets. It is something that's going to take time, but that's just the nature of investment. So there's two different ways to look at this, or I should say there's two different very important points to keep in mind. One of which is the fact that the reason people are making this investment into the United States that they didn't before is because they now view the United States as a better investment. They're looking at the tax and regulatory changes that this administration is working on, and they see that as a very positive sign that this is going to be a great place to do business into the future. And the other thing that's very important to remember is that Americans will benefit from this because the reason people are investing here is not just that, yes, there is going to be a better tax and regulatory atmosphere, but it's the fact that you're going to be able to employ Americans profitably. So you will have revenue streams for Americans and revenue streams for foreigners. It's a win-win. This is literally what happened for all but 7 years from colonial times through 1870. So that's almost 250 years. And what we constantly had was this capital surplus, in other words, an inflow of capital investment into the United States. And it created a booming industrial economy.
Well, also, I feel kind of naive because I see $1.4 trillion coming out of this nation that's about the size of New Jersey, Qatar. And I think even if you do spread it out over 10 years, they're investing $140 billion a year. My God, how wealthy are these people?
Oh, obscenely so. I mean, look, for a lot of these countries in the Middle East who just have massive oil revenues, look, the state of Texas is familiar with this phenomenon, right? When you go through these periods of relatively high oil prices and high sales volumes, you make a lot of money. And if your infrastructure is already there, then the costs are relatively low. And now all that money you're making translates directly into profit. So it's a huge win for them. And again, it's good that they're going to turn around and invest those proceeds back here into the United States.
Well, E.J. Antoni Heritage Foundation, a lot of people, the cynics out there think, well, yeah, they made a bunch of deals with some other oligarchy, rich people, and big business or oil companies might benefit from this. But how does this affect the common man?
It affects the common man because you'll see more American jobs. It's not as if these people, when they say we're investing in America, it's not as if they're going to do what the Chinese Communist Party has been doing, where their version of investment is just buying up any farmland they can, especially if it's near a military base. That takes money out of Americans' pockets because now you don't have future revenue from that asset. In other words, that farm predictably was generating revenue every year through crop sales, or if it's a cattle ranch, let's say, obviously through beef. So instead of that continuous revenue stream being in American hands, now it's in the hands of members of the Chinese Communist Party. That's bad. You don't want that kind of investment. You don't want asset sales. Instead, what we're looking at here is going to be more plants and equipment in the United States. Again, that's a good thing. That's a win both for the foreigners who are going to make money on the deal, and it's a win for Americans who are also going to make some money, but more importantly, are going to be employed.
So explain the lifting of sanctions on Syria. I haven't heard a whole lot of good things about the government out of there, but apparently Trump sees something he likes.
Honestly, this one is a bit of a head scratcher. And from what I gather, it was a very quick decision. That's not to say it was shooting from the hip and there wasn't thought involved, just that the process moved very, very quickly. So we'll have to wait and see. Ultimately, hindsight will tell us if this was a good idea or a bad idea. But I have a feeling that it is going to work out well, because what we have seen repeatedly, particularly in the Middle East, when we engage in these crazy nation-building activities and we end up toppling regimes, and then worse people come in and we have to sanction them and do all these other things, I think it's high time we start getting our hands off the rest of the world and let those people figure it out.
Why do I feel like the threat to rename the Persian Gulf the Arabian Gulf is almost an economic move?
Well, that seems to be the new what's in vogue today, right? Is renaming gulfs, whether it's the Gulf of America or the Gulf of Arabia. Look, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's fun to talk about and whatnot, but I don't see any real. I don't. It's of zero import at the end of the day.
All right, is that going to bring them to the table? Do they care what we call that body of water? They'll still call it whatever they want in their language, but it's in the middle of these economic talks, so that one kind of tickled me a little bit. We'll just poke at your ego here across the negotiating table. E.J. Antoni, good stuff. Keep it up at the Heritage Foundation. I appreciate your time, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right, good stuff. See, all this stuff, all these investments, is just more runway for the economy to take off. It's time to be optimistic, folks. There's a lot of huge headlines with some big numbers in them. $600 billion agreement signed between the United States and Saudi Arabia. A $1.2 or $1.4 trillion deal reached with the Qataris. We have Netflix that's building a new studio within the United States, over $1 billion. But is this actually going to have a positive effect on you and your family? Let's ask a local financial advisor, Steve Cotton out of Addison. Welcome back to the James Show, sir. And I know some people don't like the term trickle down, but it seems like big investments like this could have reverberations throughout the entire American economy.
You're exactly right, James, and thank you. It's such an honor to be on your great show. Trump is playing three-dimensional chess, and that's what people need to understand. This negotiating that he is doing right now has four basic components. It has the obvious economic component of bilateral trade. It has a military component of aid to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. It has a diplomatic component, which the ultimate audiences are also China, Iran, Russia as well. And what I think President Trump is trying to do is to demonstrate that there's much more to be gained through bilateral and multilateral economic deals than by people staying in their respective militant corners and just doing death and destruction.
Well, also, there's the old beautiful part of the capitalist side of the economic thought spectrum that said, wars start when trade ends. And you could say that conversely, when trade stops, wars begin. And the more that we are tied and invested in each other's economy, that has a tendency to just have such an incentive for peace in the Middle East. And I've always said that if you want peace in the Middle East, we should start doing more business with them than less.
Well, I think that is largely true, but there are some possible exceptions. The Iranian mullahs who run Iran are theocrats. They are not economists. They are not strategists. They are not diplomats. They are not economists. They are theocrats, and they are committed to getting an atomic weapons capability because they see that, much like the North Koreans, as the only guarantor of their militant Islamic regime. So it's going to be very difficult for them to make decisions to enable their nuclear program to be disassembled. They are not going to want to agree to intrusive inspections, and those are the only terms under which I think President Trump will do any kind of deal with them. Russia likewise has red lines. They must not allow Ukraine to join NATO. Putin is going to play hardball on this, and so as good as these economic announcements are and as huge an impact as I think this will ultimately have on the American economy and jobs and consumers in Dallas, Texas, there's a political component to this that should not be underestimated.
Well, let's also, Steve Cotton, financial advisor based out of Addison. You have clients, they call you and they say, how do I take advantage of this upcoming economic boom? Where do you direct them? Do you tell them just push money into index funds, or it can't be that simple?
Well, I don't make general recommendations. I always look at each client and what their needs are, what their objectives are, what their risk tolerance is. But I can tell you generally that my clients are very richly diversified. They have multi-level strategies. We use all kinds of good investment instruments that are proven. I don't ever gamble with my clients' money. But I think that there is going to be more upside in the equity markets going forward than downside. And if the inflation is now down from 4.3 to about 4.2, it's the lowest it's been in 4 years. And if that trend continues, that's going to give the Federal Reserve the rationale for resuming their interest rate cuts. And if that happens, bond values in their bond part of their portfolio will rise, and that's positive. So I think we could be headed for some very good economic times if all of this continues on track and plays out.
All right, Steve Cotton, you can find him. He's a financial advisor based out of the Addison area. Thank you for sharing your expertise on the James Show, sir.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right, good stuff. See, a lot of positivity. This has been like a completely positive week. It's like this book is hilarious. People being histrionic about getting a free airplane for the taxpayers. That's a fun little bout of criticism to slap around. People complaining about the South African refugees. Yeah, look out for the South Africans. They really ruin the neighborhood when they move in. You know, with all those South African drug gangs and narco terrorists. Yeah, those South Africans, they're evil. What are they going to do? Come over here and build rockets? I saw this on WFAA. Dallas is taking a second look at their parking regulations, and a lot of people are freaking out saying this will make things worse. I hear this, and I think the exact same opposite. And in this situation, this is one of the many segments on the James Show where you may think this is about something else, but it's really about economics. You may think this is a civil engineering or a traffic issue. No. The answers to these questions can be found with a study of economics. But first, we go to our news partner, WFAA, for the reports.
8 on the clock. Time now for your morning rush. And the Dallas City Council voted to drop minimum parking requirements across the city. We're talking restaurants, apartments, other developments, no longer needing a set number of parking spots based on size or bedroom count. This has been an issue for developers for a while, and city leaders say it will boost development and help small businesses. Although there are some residents who say it could make parking even tougher to find.
All right, let's talk about this one. Because you don't have to worry about the number of cars on the road. You don't have to worry about how wide the lanes are or parking spaces. A lot of these questions are simply economics here. And just so you know, if I say something that you disagree with, or I'm an Austrian economist, this is the point of view I'm coming from. So if you don't understand it, maybe you could just Wikipedia that later. But the first question is, why did we have the parking regulations in the first place? And I hate the term parking regulations because it almost sounds like this is a recommendation that if you want things to go smoothly, this is what we would do. No, actually, let's phrase it like this. Why would you force buildings to have parking? Why would you force them to have a certain amount? Because if they don't build enough parking spots, their business will suffer. Their project, which they're spending tens of millions of their own dollars on, runs a higher risk of failure. Their return on that investment diminishes if they get this wrong. But also, let's say that they have this project in mind and it just doesn't work with the amount of parking and they underbuild. Well, that means parking is going to become more valuable. There's going to be a premium for parking spaces in that little area. Well, then it opens up business opportunities for those people who would build parking garages or maybe just a flat surface level parking area. Maybe the building next door will overbuild their garage to make up for the demand there, and they can have a little extra income off of that. You know, maybe the one place wants to have like an opulent looking building where everything's on the first floor and there's no ugly parking garage and they just don't have room for it. And so the next building can take advantage. They're just like, yeah, we're a little more industrial and we're not too worried about optics. We already have a parking garage anyway. Maybe we'll just overbuild ours. So the supply and demand get soaked up pretty easily if you just get out of the damn way. Maybe it'll open up more opportunities for standalone parking garages. And if you're a standalone parking garage, that means that's your business. That's your primary business. You're not in like the office retail space business and you are forced to have a parking garage. So it's easy to think that if you could just focus someone's time and energy and expertise into this one industry, standalone parking garages, probably more profitable, more efficient anyway. So why get in the way of a problem that's going to take care of itself? Just get out of the way. And then there's the basic, this is another just fundamental of Austrian economics, too. The city councilmen and the bureaucrats at the permitting and zoning office and code enforcement, could they possibly know more about real estate development than the people who make buildings for a living? Could they possibly know more than the guy who has a $160 million real estate portfolio? And this is the 24th building he has built in the last 10 years. Could you possibly have some dork down in the city offices making $82,000 a year that has the knowledge in his head that the real estate mogul has? That's a hell of a stretch. The people that are writing these rules and voting on them, the city councilmen, do they know more? And even if they do, how are their incentives aligned? Do they have the right incentive structure to get this correct? What happens if they're wrong? Do they experience any negative consequences if they write dumb rules that cause investors to change their mind and build elsewhere? Screw it, we'll go build in Irving, or we'll go build in Addison or Plano or Frisco or Fort Worth or Keller or Burleson or something, anywhere but here, because your parking regulations are dumb and they make my project not profitable, or not as profitable as it would be if I just went up 35 a little bit. What's the negative consequence to the city councilmen and the bureaucrats if they get this wrong, if they run off investment? They get paid the same. Wouldn't fewer parking spots incentivize people to actually use DART and bike lanes? Oh my goodness. Now that's something I absolutely despise, is DART and bike lanes. But by your own admission, you're trying to get people to use it. We have Bicycle to Work Day, and we have all kinds of glowing praise for DART and public relations and ads for it and whatnot. Do you want people to use DART or not? Do you want it? So you're incentivizing them to use both public transportation and the bike lane and their cars? So if you impose all kinds of costs and controls for DART and bike lanes, but also costs and controls to accommodate cars. It sounds like you just want money and control. Oh, yeah. That makes sense now. Jim in Mesquite, you're on WBAP. What do you think?
Well, I think it's all about the dollar. I think it's all about making them more money. When I say them, the developers, the city council, all these people that make decisions, everybody's in everybody's pocket, in my opinion. And all these projects, all these road projects, building projects, all the stuff in our city needs to make our lives better and easier, in my opinion. We're the citizens. We're the one that pays for a lot of these projects. And I don't feel like the project is going to make our lives better. Like right now, I'm stuck in traffic trying to get home from work. I'm going to be here for an hour. I don't know how many projects we've put on the road to how much money we've spent making the roads better, but they don't do anything for us. I'm getting tired of that. I'll let you talk. I'm going to hang up.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim in Mesquite. How do you feel? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I think he was mostly right. I wouldn't be that absolute. I wouldn't say they don't do any good, all these road projects. I don't know. Some of the road projects are just amazing monuments that are going to be our ruins. You ever think about that? You ever think about how that big intersection at 75 and 635, long after America collapses, after we get invaded or the robot revolution or, I don't know, Planet of the Apes takes over, you realize in like 2,000 years from now, that's going to be our ruins. You know how the Romans left behind aqueducts and roads and stuff? That big exchange is going to be something after civilization collapses. They're going to marvel and be like, how did those geniuses ever build that? And what was that for? That was just for an intersection? Wow, that must have been an amazing civil. That's going to be our ruins. Of course, we'll probably have flying cars or teleporting by then. Come on out and see me. I have my next remote. It's coming up on Monday. I'm going to be at the Mullen & Mullen Golf Tournament, Las Colinas Golf Club, Country Club. I'll be doing the show live from 2 to 5. I'll be hanging out for quite a bit beforehand and maybe for a little bit afterwards. I don't know. Depends on how expensive the bar is, really. But come on out, say hi. And you don't have to golf to enjoy it. It's a scene. Most of the people there aren't playing golf in my experience in all the golf tournaments where I've gone and done remotes and whatnot. But it's raising money for a good cause. They've been doing it for 41 years, and Scottish Rite Hospital would like your donations anyway. So come out to the Las Colinas Country Club this Monday, May 19th. It gets started at 7 a.m. I am not going to be there at 7 a.m., but if you're an early bird, you can go ahead and get there. It'll be happening all day. More information, mullenandmullen.com. My next guest, someone I had to bring on when I saw the story that 27% of new prescriptions go unfilled because they aren't covered by the health insurer. Well, what can we do about that? Well, since it's your first time on the James Show, Patrick Moore, tell me a little bit about your outfit, Pretect, P-R-E-T-E-K-T. I enjoy the eccentric spelling here, but how does this give you a background on helping us cover the costs of healthcare?
Yeah, James, thanks for having me on. So Pretect, P-R-E-T-E-K-T. It is the phonetic spelling of the word protect. And what we do is really protect employers and their employees from this crazy healthcare world that they all have to deal with.
So when we see the headline here, 27% of new prescriptions go unfilled because they're not covered by insurers, that's kind of scary. That means more than 1 out of 4 people are skimping on what could be life-saving medication.
Yeah, it's sad, right? And I think the combination of that report and then what the president passed on Monday with the executive order regarding favored nation status for prescription drugs in this country, it's just a week to talk about drugs. But yeah, I mean, people are foregoing medication because, quite frankly, the rent's too damn high.
So a lot of people thought that when they retire and they get age 65, you sign up for Medicare and it's all going to be covered. But what does Medicare actually cover when it comes to your drugs?
Yeah, it's gotten better actually over the years. Back in 2003, they passed the Medicare Part D Act, and that was under President Bush at the time. And that was a bill that really added a lot of complexity to insurance and drugs specifically, because what happened is the drug companies, they got a whole new market of which they could sell their drugs to. It was a huge boondoggle for them. And what we've seen is drugs have really increased in price ever since.
Well, are people who require prescription drugs getting poorer, or are the drugs getting more voluminous, or are they getting more expensive?
It's both, brother. It's both. So drugs are getting too expensive. I mean, we are seeing some gene drugs in the multiple millions of dollars. I mean, we have the big growth of the GLP-1s in this country, the Ozempics and things of that nature. The fat shot, as President Trump talked about on Monday. But that drug used to be treated with metformin for $2 a month. And now we're looking at $1,200, $1,300 a month in those type of prescriptions. And combine that with just more and more drugs being used by Americans. I mean, the average family, somewhere in between 12 to 15 prescriptions per family.
That's wild.
And,
well, see, that's another part of this.
It's a crazy number.
Patrick Moore from Protect. I don't see a whole lot of people talking about that aspect of there's just more drugs going around. Like the prescriptions per household is something that I don't see a whole lot of people paying attention to. Maybe we're just on too many drugs.
I couldn't argue that point. I would tell you that's probably a lot of truth. I mean, unfortunately, there's not a lot of checks and balances in the system. I mean, the first thing that happens is people get a prescription to treat this or that, and we really don't focus on the root of most problems. And the reason is because that's not where the money's at in this country. And so the insurance mechanism that kind of funds all of these things, they get paid on that drug supply chain. And it's really been pushing up the amount of drugs that Americans take.
Well, I've just seen it balloon for my dad. I'm on 0 prescription drugs, never had a prescription in my life. But my dad had a heart attack and had some other issues. And then when he got one drug, it had some side effects. So then there was this other drug for the side effect, but that made his mouth really dry and kind of messed up his hunger. So he had to take another drug for that. And all of a sudden, it just cascaded to where this guy's a walking pill farm.
Yeah, James, I hate to hear that, man. That's absolutely terrible. But I mean, I saw the same thing. I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps, and I have a lot of my buddies that use the VA system and
yes,
the mental drugs.
That's my dad. Yeah, VA. That's exactly the same thing. VA system. All right. Well, I wish we had more time. But they find you at Protect Health, but you spell it weird. PRETEKT. Hey, I like the eccentric spelling. I like that. Protect.health, not .com or .org. Protect.health. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, Patrick Moore.
Thank you, James.
All right, coming up next, Trump is being accused of racism for allowing South African refugees. Do you think it's racist? I think it's a great idea. I'll explain next on The James Show. Also, just like to reiterate, live from the Mullen & Mullen Charity Golf Tournament, Las Colinas Country Club, this Monday. Come on out and see me live from 2 to 5, or just be out there all day. It's for a great cause. All right, if you want to jump in, 800-288-9227. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.